Hello, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of Vancouver Real. I am your co-host today, Mike Zaremba, and joining me at the helm is my brother, Andy.
Hey, everybody. I'm happy to be behind the helm today because I'm a little bit foggy. I'm actually starting the first day of a 10-day cleanse. So no caffeine, no alcohol, no substances of any kind, no salt, no sugar. It's actually a cleanse. It's a program, but it's leading up to dieta. So after the 10 days, I'm going straight on dieta because Mike and I are going to be heading down to Peru in July, which is very exciting.
Yeah, so I will be lifting us through this podcast for sure. And but thanks for joining me anyways, man.
Yeah, of course.
And as per usual, we are podcasting here at a float house at 70 West Cordova Street in downtown Vancouver, BC, Canada. And if you are joining us from abroad, welcome to the show. Float House is the sponsor of Vancouver Real, and floathouse.ca is the website. We are a commercial flotation therapy center, so we house float tanks, also known as isolation tanks or sensory deprivation tanks. And if you haven't heard of flotation therapy, just go to YouTube and do a quick search after this video, obviously, of what is floating. And as the top hit there, we made a video that's very clear and concise, kind of gives you the background. If you are in the area, you want to try flotation therapy, come on into Float House, use the promo code VancouverReal, and you'll save yourself 20%. And I'm going to pass it over to Andy for some community announcements.
Yeah, absolutely. We, again, we're going to be giving a shout out to the Vancouver Real community page, and that's spearheaded by Candace White and Sean, and they're doing an amazing job with the community.
Yep.
We have meetups every single month. In fact, we had an amazing one with our current guest today, which we'll get into in a second. I heard nothing but good things from the weekend, which is fantastic.
It was awesome.
And the next one we have coming up is with Slava Golubov. He was a yoga teacher. He still is a yoga teacher, but he's also a movement specialist. And this guy can do some pretty crazy, like Ido Portal kind of stuff. And if you really want to learn how to move and how to move your body efficiently, this is the guy to do it. So check out the Vancouver Real community page, and you can go to the events, and we'll have our Slava Golubov meetup posted there, and you can feel free to join us for that one.
Excellent. So I think that's about it. Oh, we do have a mindful mass coming up on June 20th, so next Tuesday for the summer solstice.
Yes.
Go to the Mindful Mass group page on Facebook or mindfulmass.org and sign up for that newsletter, and then you will be able to join us for the summer solstice meditation at Granville Island here in Vancouver, British Columbia. So definitely go check that out if you haven't yet, mindfulmass.org or Mindful Mass Community on Facebook. And that's it. Let's move into today's show, because we are excited to welcome author Kasper van der Meulen. How is that?
It's pretty good.
Okay.
Good enough.
All right. Well, because you're talking about how us North Americans kind of butcher your name all the time. So I was.
Oh no, I'm not bothered by it at all.
Okay.
I'm used to it.
All right. And Kasper, you're from Europe, obviously. Sorry, what country are you from officially?
Netherlands.
Netherlands.
Yes.
Okay. Jeez. I think I do have my background on that, but. So Kasper is an author of the book called MindLift. You're also a certified instructor of the Wim Hof method. You've been doing that for a very long time. And you're all about mental fitness. You call yourself a teacher of mental fitness. This is now your full-time occupation. And you were traveling around. You were in Vancouver for the past week doing this. You had a full weekend immersion, and then we did the free workshop with you this past weekend. Long-winded, but welcome to Vancouver Real.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's exciting.
Cool. And welcome back. I know you said you were in Vancouver before for your honeymoon.
Yeah.
And so I know your family's here with you today. And so it
Yes.
must be a really cool part of this experience as well.
Oh yeah. So when we were here the first time, actually, that was kind of the start of a new period in my life. Well, we just got married and we were on a honeymoon, which was pretty cool. But ever since then, I started to do more of what makes me feel optimal and making like big life choices based on that, and I found a lot of the inspiration for that right here in Vancouver, and actually on Vancouver Island, which was kind
Very
of
cool.
Like a spiritual experience for me just to be there, immersed in that kind of nature. And I was like, this whole international lifestyle thing, that's what I'm going to build.
Cool.
And I still had a job then, and I kind of decided, I think I might have decided to quit that job right out here. So this is a cool pivotal point in my life. And then I did that a few months later, and ever since I've been traveling the world and teaching. I got my family along. We've built this adventurous lifestyle where we get to go everywhere and talk to people and teach cool methods.
Living the dream, man.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
Nice.
It's a fun ride.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
It's really inspiring too, because I'm actually expecting my first child this fall.
Oh, wow.
And so it's really cool to see like this different approach to raising a family. Like, hey, I'm going to take my family with me on the road and create this lifestyle that there's not a lot to model after, so you're kind of just doing it on your own, which is I just think is really, really cool.
Yeah, it's very, very exciting, and also, but it's easy to glorify it, but also, I do almost every day. I do something I've never done before, and a lot of times I do things that haven't been done before, at least not by anybody I know. So there's a lot of, You have to be willing to constantly be at the edges of the comfort zone. But that's the place that I love to be right now.
Cool.
And it's an amazing privilege to be able to show my daughter an example of a unique life that is different from most of the examples that are available.
Oh, for sure. And you never know how the stimulus of this different environment, this different culture will shape that young individual as well going forward, right?
Oh, yeah. So, yeah, this to me, that is the big thing. And it's not like I want to have like a successful business and a successful career and family life. To me, it's one integrated thing. Yeah. And I've spent actually my just about first year in Western Africa where my parents lived when I was born. And that has had such a massive imprint on me. Just to have that first year, and then we spent a year in London, but to have those first 2 years of my life be international and be about a mission that is greater than our own family. My parents were out there helping people and doing amazing things. And I feel like I've always benefited from that first imprint in this hypersensitive period of brain development and of psyche development, that I had this imprint of, understanding what tribal living is, and understanding that the world is a bigger place than just what you see, and understanding that everything you believe is just created by the bubble of the society that you live in. Mm-hmm. And to be able to look beyond that has been a massive gift.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, Andy and I, we had the opportunity when we were in our early teens. I was 13 and he was 15, so still in like a very influential stage of our lives. And our family went, my parents were teachers at that time, and they did a teacher exchange with a family in Australia. So we went and lived in Australia, obviously completely different climate, complementary cultures with Canada. So, same but different. But just going to a different schools and a completely different nation, and obviously the environment there is drastically different from Canada. So that alone as well was very formative for me. So I can imagine the same thing for you, and hopefully for your daughter as well.
Yeah, it's been amazing, especially coming from an educational background, and always have been studying brain development and integration of all these different tools that are out there into brain development and learning and cognition and all of that. Mm-hmm. So I'm a total nerd for this stuff. And then when I became a father, I was like, wow, this is becoming more and more interesting, because you get to see these these pivotal developmental moments where you go, wow, that was pretty awesome. And like, my daughter has been in 6 different countries. This is her 3rd transatlantic trip. She's very good at dealing with jet lags, luckily. And she's heard like 12 different languages, and the kind of atmosphere that you have, like in the Vancouver Real community last weekend, where we had a group and they all come together and they're open and they're sharing and they all want to connect. There's this kind of magic, this vibe that's there. And that always happens when people come together all over the world 100%. And they open themselves up, and they're willing to step out of their normal frame of thinking about the world, and they kind of open up and they connect. And to me, that's the magic I want to find and create all over the world, which is why I'm doing this whole teaching thing, especially because I want to see my daughter, my baby girl, around that kind of environment, because that's the world. Exactly, because that's the world I want my daughter to grow up in, and now I'm very privileged to show her that world already. And she's been around atmospheres like that in my workshops and retreats and stuff for at least, I'd say 80 or 90 days, let's say 3 months out of her first life, which is, to me, it's a massive privilege.
Definitely.
That's really, really interesting. And I mean, obviously, like with this new lifestyle, with this profession you're creating, obviously you have MindLift is your book, and then you're going around teaching all these mental fitness, cognitive optimization, biohacking kind of little tricks, all empirically supported. So you have become like a huge nerd on this stuff.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of experience. Can you kind of take us back into your background a little bit? What got you interested in this? I mean, you shared some of that at the meetup we just had with Vancouver Real Community, of where you were as a rapper, and now your transformation. Can you kind of talk about that a little bit?
Yeah. So this new path started about 5 or 6 years ago, when I was overweight and depressed and burnt out, and I had all kinds of injuries, all lifestyle related. There's actually a period before that when I was between 12 and 16, when I had a really, really hard time with life and was depressed, and I had a lot of substance abuse going on, escaping from reality, and I found myself suffering a lot. And I was like, why does this need to happen? And there's actually one pivotal story that I told that at the talk, and it's become the first chapter of my book.
Cool.
Because when I wrote the book first, it was in Dutch, and I was kind of still uncomfortable with telling certain kind of stories. And then I started teaching and noticing how my stories could impact others. And then when I started to write the English version, which is not a literal translation, but it's like a new updated version, I actually wrote my most like vulnerable story in the first chapter of the book. But it tells this little story about how I came out of 4 years of not being sober and then being in my backyard, about to go back to school because I hadn't been there for a long time. And I was like, okay, I'm doing it. I'm going to devote my life to science, become a biologist, save the trees and save the whales and stuff like that. And I have to go to university. So when I made it bigger than myself, I was focused on my own suffering for so long. And then I was like, hold on. I woke up out of this haze. I was like, the world needs people that can do things that are healthy and that can actually contribute. So let's do that. I'm going to devote my life to science and become a biologist. Anyway, so I wanted to go to the school, and I got this massive panic attack. As soon as I put a foot towards the direction of going to school, the panic would just like, my heart rate would go up, and I started hyperventilating, and my palms got sweaty and adrenaline all over the place. And then I was like, you know what? Forget about it. I'll go back home, and this is not the day. And then as soon as I went back, that whole thing subsided. And then I had a moment of clarity where I was like, hold on, I'm still in the safety of my backyard. In actual, present reality, not much is going on. Not much is going wrong, at least. Except my mindset, every single mental change that I make, either towards the direction of discomfort or towards the direction of comfort, completely changes my entire physiology. Mm-hmm. And that was the first pivotal moment where I was like, there's a field of study that I want to get into. And then I got into all kinds of meditation and martial arts and stuff like that.
Are you referring to like the stress response in fight or flight?
Yeah, that's what I noticed back then. So that I had this mental change, and then I had either fight, flight, or relaxation, basically. And what's interesting now that I actually get to turn on that exact same response at will. So what used to be the worst moment of my life, that insane, I've had a lot of anxiety problems and panic problems. That was like the lowest. And because I felt like I was losing my mind. But the exact physiological reaction that I had in that moment is now something that I can just utilize for fun or for practical stuff, or when I'm about to go into an ice bath or stuff like that.
Yeah. Right. And that seems to be like what a lot of the Wim Hof method is about, right? Controlling the autonomic nervous system.
Yeah.
And I'm guessing just gaining control over that through the exercises. And maybe you could describe that process a little bit, like how that works.
So, well, it's difficult. It's difficult to explain exactly how that works because there's a lot of knobs and levers in there that you need to get acquainted with. And it's all about increasing awareness. And a lot of people who come into something like the Wim Hof method, or even people who go into martial arts, or they want to learn like amazing techniques and tricks, they want to have the tricks and feel like as soon as they have the trick, they might be able to do it. But it's all just tools, right? It's all tools for learning the same thing. I mean, you can...
So you actually have to practice the stuff.
Yeah, you have to practice it. And it's the same thing with floating. You can get into a float tank and just lay there and go into fantasy for an hour and just chill out. But you could also use it as a feedback mechanism to go into a much deeper meditation than normal, right? So it's very much about how you integrate these tools. And this whole idea of autonomous control, of creating control over your nervous system and immune system and these things that are supposed to go on autopilot, it is very much about finding triggers and then watching yourself respond and then learning how to take conscious control over those reactions. So it starts, and the same thing is with meditation. And you see this stuff in the Shaolin monasteries. They train this stuff. And what's great about Wim Hof is that he's the first guy who he found this, and then he didn't go, you know what, I'm going to hide in my cave and I'm going to be the mystical guru and go like, if you want to learn this, you better sit in a cave and meditate for 10 years and find me on the mountaintop. He just went, this is awesome. Let's give it to the world. Right. And that's very, very much the way that I want to approach these things, is where you find these tools, and then the first thought should be, how do I give this to other people? That's what I've been basing my whole life off, my whole lifestyle lately. Yeah. So, it all begins with understanding that there is more to be learned, more to be had in life.
And that kind of comes into like that first little, personal realization you had when you were 16, which, is pretty remarkable in my opinion, like of being that aware of your state and having that kind of like a little bit of a disassociation, that little separation of like, hey, wait a minute, there's nothing wrong here. But yet I'm having this incredibly strong visceral reaction to it. Yeah. And that's kind of like a very gross example. But now it's like learning that, okay, when you're in that scenario, okay, can I just somehow slow things down, hit pause, or do some sort of technique or exercise or strategy or posture that will start to change that effect instead of being just a slave to it, at its whim, you know what I mean? And that's kind of a lot of stuff that you're teaching these days, right? In different ways.
Yeah, it's very much about learning how to slowly and consciously gain control over the different factors over your life instead of just being kind of like plankton floating around with whatever happens. So I really like the term personal freedom, where you understand that freedom is a state of mind. It's something that you can cultivate and create through practice. And there's so many cool tools out there. And if you use them with the right mindset, you can gain amazing amounts of control in your life and really start to craft a lifestyle that is where you feel like you're in the most optimal state of expression. I feel like that's the ultimate goal to all of this.
Right? What are some of those tools? What are the most common ones that you play with and have worked on and maybe even mastered?
Well, I always strive for mastery, and the most fundamental understanding to do that is to never think you have mastery. So yes. I would never say.
So you're a constant student, always learning.
The child mindset. That's a very important thing. But in terms of tools, I feel the Wim Hof method has been one of the most profound because it's so disruptive in a lot of ways, but also based on a lot of common sense, actually. So a lot of things that have been known for thousands of years have now been put in this package where it's been made very disruptive and very, very accessible to people. For me, running has been a massive game changer for my mindset and for my whole health, because and then I'm talking about the mindful kind of running, slow, long distance running, where you're not worried about time, you're not worried about what you're going to put on Facebook, about how fast you are, you don't worry about whether you have the newest shoes with the most amazing gel soles or whatever. Just very calm, mindful running, and I do it barefoot, and then you have a breathing practice, you have a meditation practice, you have a mindfulness practice, a movement practice, a proprioceptive practice where you align with the ground and you become very much aware of what goes on in your body through every step you take, right? So it's another one of those things. If I approach it that way, I think running is probably has been the biggest thing in my life.
Cool.
It becomes very meditative, I'm guessing, right?
Yeah.
Like I notice when I do some kind of like long distance cardio exercises that it really just, you get into an interesting flow state. I guess that you could call it that. That's probably an accurate term, right? Like when I'm doing the grouse grind, I do the grouse grind with this guy named Dave Wheel. We go at 6:15 usually. I usually go on Thursdays, but he goes every single day of the week. And eat a couple grind bars, pop up the grind, and you're not really worrying about the rest of the day at that point, especially when you're like gasping for air and navigating the trail. You're in nature, you're really in that present moment. And I find by doing that, it's just it's a great start to the day, really. I mean, any stress that might have been in my body at that time is completely blown out.
Yeah, absolutely. And the thing is that I'm looking for practices that give me the feeling of, this is what my body was built for.
Yeah.
What it was built for by all these millions of years of evolution. And I now have this gift of this human life, which is pretty spectacular to be born as a human in the first place, right? And now I get to find these modes of expression of being human that feel like, this is what my body's made for.
Yeah.
And a lot of times it's not the easiest thing. A lot of times it means, as hunter-gatherers, our brain works best as we are moving, as we are in a steady state of movement, and we have a wide gaze, and our feet are touching the ground, and we are present with our thoughts. And so, for example, a lot of times when I'm running, I'm also foraging. So I know in my home surroundings, I know about 60 or 70 edible plants, and especially in springtime, I'm foraging. And then I'm running towards this cold river where I swim, and I try to get this cold in. I do my breathing practice and all these things that are kind of difficult to do, the cold and keeping yourself running. And also I've found amazing personal insights in the most exhausted, painful moments of being in an ultramarathon, for example, that are very, very similar. If I hear people describe their ayahuasca experience or their vipassana experience, like a 10-day silent meditation retreat, or whatever way they got around it, they have these deep insights. And I found that through running too, and all of these things, there's so many things that can give you, like the breathing, the Wim Hof breathing, especially the power breathing style breathing, where there's like DMT release, and you have these deep insights, and you go so deep into your physiology. There's all these awesome tools that can get you to that space.
Yeah, at the workshop that Wim did in Vancouver, I'm not sure how many rounds of Wim Hof breathing that we did, but it was like one of the deepest experiences with the breath work that I've ever gone. Like, I felt it in my entire body. It started in my hands, that always starts, but then my entire body was just like vibrating. And then I felt it really strongly in the center of my chest and in the back of my head for whatever reason. And it was like, just that sensation of vibrating, but just like really intense, but not painful. It felt really good, actually.
Yeah.
But I've never felt it that strong before. And then you combine that with like the cold water immersion. Now, maybe in your words, like, what is it about that cold water that really triggers that response, or triggers you to be able to train that response? Because is it just that the fact that the cold is so confrontational in a way that like you can't escape it, and you kind of just have to deal with that cold water like right now, and there's nothing else? Is that what it is?
Well, to me, yeah. So, there's a whole host of physiological benefits to doing cold training, right? So you have your circulatory system that's challenged, you have your metabolism that gets kicked in the ass, you can start to develop brown fats, all this cool stuff.
Yeah.
But to me, it's about understanding how the brain is built to want to survive, right? So you have this emotional, mental, like file cabinet where you've gathered all this information about how to deal with the world. And that is all very basically human behavior is kind of motivated by either fear of something, so remembering that something is scary, or knowing that something is scary and dangerous and then staying away from it, or knowing that something is fun and pleasurable and then moving towards it. So you want to move away from pain and towards pleasure. That's kind of like how the brain is built. So as soon as you decide that you're going to do something that feels dangerous and that feels very intense, like the ice cold is a very, very powerful survival stimulus, what happens is you get to watch as parts of you start to protest. And they start to go, hold on, this guy apparently wants to go into the cold. Let's throw all of this stuff out there to help him understand that this is not a good idea. So you stick your hand in and you get a ton of pain. And then we've learned to take pain personal and to take it very seriously as a dangerous signal. And it's like, whoa, and you move back. And people you see, as soon as we're standing outside in the sunshine and everything's fine. Last week on the beach, Kitsilano Beach, Jericho Beach, actually, beautiful weather. Everybody's in their swim gear. You're at the beach. We've got pools, like the most summery vibe you can get. Then we start throwing like 400 kilos of ice into these tubs, and people start changing their posture into a weak posture. They start shivering. They start breathing up into their chest. So they're going into this fight-flight mode, even though there's no reason to, because they're suffering from the cold that they're not even in yet. And that's what I find really interesting, because that means that this autopilot, as soon as there's something dangerous, there's these, we call them lower parts of the brain, which doesn't do them full justice, but I mean, at least organizationally, they're lower,
Yes.
Right. These survival systems, they start to work. And they start to throw whatever they have out there to convince you to not do this dangerous stuff. So what you have there is a practice where you kind of tease out these survival systems, and you do something that triggers them, that invites them out to play, and then you watch them, and you work with them, and you deal with them. And that gives the ability to work with all of your survival systems.
Yeah.
Is that in a sense kind of getting like the frontal cortex or the neocortex? Is that essentially overriding those survival mechanisms, saying like, no, we don't have to respond to them? It's kind of like taking control of them in that way?
That's one of the things, That's one of the things. So the part of your body, so let's say the parts of your brain, like the mammalian brain and the reptilian brain, in a sense, the more primitive parts of your brain, they're the ones that actually deal with danger and fear and with hormonal responses and with all the physical responses. So the more you pay attention to logical thought, which is going on like in your prefrontal lobe, and all this narration of going, yes, but what if this happens and then that happens? What if I freeze my toe off and again go to work tomorrow and they'll think I'm a fool and I'll lose my job and I won't have food, blah, blah, blah. All of that doomsday thinking.
Yeah.
You get to watch that. And the only way to deal with cold or pain, and a lot of people, like you probably see people around here in the float house that have a difficult time with sensory deprivation, which is also an extreme, or extreme exhaustion like in ultra running. All of those things trigger these responses and give you an opportunity to watch this narration happen, and then to almost disconnect from it and understand that as long as you're present in your body and you allow yourself to feel whatever is there to feel, that you're going to be okay. And the Wim Hof method, the cold training, is one of the most powerful practices for that I've ever found, because you can do it on a daily basis under your cold shower. Every time you're under the warm shower and you're about to go cold, this protest pops up.
Right, yeah.
And then you get to practice that.
Can I ask you a question then? So let's say you find this stimuli, whatever it happens to be, that's pretty extreme, and it's going to cause these fight or flight reactions. What is the process that you go through when you want to like calm it down? Like, do you just go to the breath? Like, how does that work for you?
Yeah, breath is a very important thing. If the first thing I can do is realize that I'm suffering, right? So that I can take a step back and going, hold on, I'm suffering. Why am I suffering? Well, if you're suffering from something like that, at least, chances are you're taking yourself very seriously and you're taking whatever is happening to you personally. And those are to me, the two fundamental factors for personal freedom is understanding that you don't have to take yourself seriously and you don't have to take life personally. So from that realization, that frees you from the experience and gives you the opportunity. So, okay, what kind of tools do I now have? And actually, this is why Wim Hof has been the only formal mentor in my life, because he was the only one I could find that did not take himself seriously. Right?
Yeah.
So he takes his missions more seriously than anything in the world, and he takes himself not seriously at all. Right? So he doesn't have to be the guru. People don't need to take him seriously because they can see his results and his work and take that seriously. And that's the one thing, apart from the breath and the cold and everything, but that's the one kind of character trait that I wanted to study and learn from Wim Hof. So as soon as you can kind of disconnect from there, then you can start to use your tools. Yeah. And the breath is a very powerful one because your state of mind and body are interlocked with your state of breath. So if you're panicked, you're going to breathe in a panicky way. But if you breathe in a panicky way, you're going to panic. So, and this is something I do a lot of work with professional athletes nowadays and other extreme performers like military or even singers and actors and stuff like that. And one of the first things I try to teach them is to breathe and act in their body, keep their posture as though they are unimpressed by the experience. Because if you act like you're unimpressed, the brain just responds to whatever stimuli come in. So if there's a cold stimuli, but there's also very calm breathing and a very relaxed posture, then there's parts in your brain that are going to go, oh, apparently it's not that dangerous because we're not breathing fast as though there's a problem, and we're not in any fight-flight kind of posture. So right. Posture and breath are the first things to go to as soon as you catch yourself taking yourself too seriously and starting to suffer.
And it's so interesting now that we, this type of knowledge and teachings and awareness are becoming more prevalent in the sense that, by combining those factors of just how you shape your body and how you're breathing, it's going to affect the experience dramatically. And you can start to, that's kind of like the generalized umbrella of what we're trying to really practice here, and you can test that in a lot of different ways, right? Like whether it's cold training or whether it's public speaking or acting or whatever, like using those types of stimuli, float tanks, sensory deprivation, to practice this exercise of like, okay, well, how do I want to automate or change this seemingly automatic reaction, right? And that type of learning is what really probably is the core of kind of what you're getting at with a lot of people, right?
Yeah, that's very well said.
Cool.
I should listen back to this and write that down.
Well, you can watch it live right after this. It's posted right away. So.
Oh, that's good. Yeah.
Yeah.
Cool. Very cool. So can you tell us a little bit about your book, MindLift, like what it's about and kind of that process? Well, actually, the doing of it was quite interesting. Can you share that as well?
Yeah. So a few years back when I realized that there was all this stuff going on, like I was overweight, I was like 35 kilos overweight, I had all these mini addictions and, migraines and heart rhythm disorder and all kinds of shit. And then I was like, okay, so something needs to change. Let's start working on that. And then I started to realize that there's all this stuff that I believed about myself and who I was that might not be true at all. So I have that kind of that mental emotional file cabinet with all this data about who you are supposed to be. I just started taking them all out and going, hey, is this thing still serving me? Is this still helping me? No. Can I let it go? And if yes, how can I apply it in this new life? So it was a very mind-opening period. And it was helped by meditation and hypnosis, self-hypnosis, stuff like that, to give me the clarity to do that. And it just started going through the files and just going, okay, so here's this thing saying that I can't run. Because I used to be one of the best basketball players in the Netherlands, actually, which means I could easily get my ass kicked by an 8-year-old American guy, probably, right? But anyway, in that country, I was one of the best, and then I got injured. And then at one point, a doctor or a physical therapist said, well, you're just not a runner. You don't have the knees for it. And I just decided to believe it. And then I was like, well, maybe fuck that. And I test it, right? So I did, and I ran a marathon, relatively untrained, actually. And all of those kinds of things I started to challenge. And one of them was that I was not literary. I was not good with words, which is ridiculous because I used to be a rapper. And actually, I won a few poetry prizes when I was a kid, when I was 17 or something, which is interesting. But still, when it came to books, I had this deep belief that I don't do books. I'm bad at them. I don't read them, and especially don't write them. And actually, my friends sometimes, they still kid that I've written more books than I read, which is not entirely true. But there was a period where it was almost true because I listened to a lot of books. Anyway, I had learned that I don't do books and I can't focus. And at a lot of points in my life, authority figures like teachers and doctors would have wanted to give me the ADHD, ADD label. And luckily, my mother would never accept the label. She was like, there must be something else going on. And so a lot of this lifestyle optimization stuff I learned from her because she was like, let's look at nutrition first. And then we changed the nutrition and everything got better. So that was good. Anyway, so I couldn't focus. I wasn't good with books. So I was like, well, what if I write a book about focus and I write it in 30 days? And that was the plan. And I took a strategy of the whole fake it till you make it thing, where I was like, what if I just embody this challenge and really dive into it and really see how far I can skip myself ahead on this challenge? So what I did is I designed the cover and I wrote the back blurb of the book and I got it all done. And I actually had it printed. I had a proof print of the non-written book. So it was about 150 pages of blank. There was nothing in there. Because I knew I wanted to write about 150 pages. I was like, if I can do that, that's kind of enough for 30 days. And then I made this video. It's on YouTube. It's in Dutch, so you won't be able to really get it. But anyway, what I've done there is I turned on my camera and I was like, hey, my name is Kasper. I'm an author. This is my book. It's called MindLift. It's about this and that and such and such. And the only thing is that I haven't really written it yet. And then I opened up the book and I showed to the camera like it's still empty. I said, I'm going to write it, and this was in December, and I said, I'm going to start writing on January 1st, and I'm going to stop writing on February 1st. And what you could do is you could go to my website, and you can pre-order it right now, and then I'll share the journey, and I'll share the whole process of how I'm writing the book and all the stuff that I'm going through. Because I was writing about focus, about productivity, about stress management, and I wanted to have a challenge that would force me to apply all of those things as I was writing it. Because if I would take 5 years to write a book about productivity, I'd be full of shit. At least that's what I was like, that wouldn't work. So, I had to really apply everything that I was writing about as I was writing the book. And but at the moment I started writing, actually about 150 copies were already sold, pre-sold, cool. Which is very interesting to me as the pressure was definitely full on.
Yeah.
So and so it took a month of writing, and then we took about another month to get the editors to go through it and to do the interior design and to get the printed proofs, and then it was done and self-published it.
Super cool.
Yeah, so it was a fun challenge.
Yeah, and so when was that? How long ago was that?
That was 2.5 years ago.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, am I saying that correctly? I think so. Yeah.
Okay, and so since then, now you've created like the MindLift learning program, basically. Yeah. And is that kind of like your primary mission right now? Is teaching that and going around and educating people on this?
Yeah. That's a good question. I get that question a lot. Like, what's your plan and what's your primary thing? And I'm just really going with the flow and trying to stay there as much as I can. So every single day I try to provide as much value as I can and ask myself, how can I be completely open, look at this whole life that I have with fresh eyes, and how can I provide value? How can I be of service? And from there, I just go wherever it flows. And it sounds kind of vague, but that's what's been happening.
Can we
right?
talk about that for a second? Like, so
Oh, yeah.
every day then, like, what do you try to do to put yourself in that sort of frame of mind to look really fresh at the world, be like, okay, this is a new day. Like, is there anything you do specifically to kind of get yourself in that sort of position?
Yeah. So gratitude so I have an active practice of gratitude that I start my day with, where I proclaim the things I'm grateful for in the moment, in the now. And one of the practices for that is just watching my daughter play, but with the mindset of how is she engaging with the world, with this child mind. A lot of things have become possible to me in these last 2 years, and I want to be able to utilize that as much as possible. So I feel that, and I've devoted my life to the art of teaching, and that it's a skill that I feel like I can keep building it my entire life. It's something that has given me tremendous opportunities for personal growth, and that's what I want to get into. But at least my take on teaching is that you can only be a good teacher if you are a good learner. And for that, I have to kind of be willing to empty my mind and to forget, to be willing to let go of old patterns. And I still wake up and I still go to bed a lot of times with old patterns. When I used to be depressed, the mornings were the grayest, darkest parts of my day. And especially if I've been working really hard and I haven't been sleeping too well, which has been a topic this last year with a baby that doesn't sleep well, I wake up and I feel dark, and I can't get my mind right. And then the only thing I can do is get up and practice, and then be willing to go like, okay, so this doesn't serve me anymore, so I have to be willing to let it go. And I express gratitude for everything that's in my life. I try to be really present in the moment, do my breath work, do my movement, get into my body, get out of my mind into my body. Mm-hmm. And then I ask myself, what am I here to do? And actually the first things that I see, I have this vision board, and it used to be covered with like all this glamorous stuff and like places that I wanted to travel and pictures of houses that I wanted to buy, right? I started with this really basic vision board. And now it just basically says, you're going to die. It's the first thing I want to see every day.
I like that.
And then it says, find the others, which is what I'm doing right now, right here.
Terence McKenna, shout out.
Yeah. Is that Terence McKenna? Find the others?
He made that pretty. Quote? Actually, it was Tim Leary.
Okay.
Yeah, Terence McKenna started saying it, and now Kasper. Yeah.
Terence McKenna is such an awesome, awesome guy. Well, anyway, so I have that. You're going to die. Find the others, and then those are the most important things that I see, and that makes me realize that this is a very short life. Yeah. If I keep living from old systems, then I can have a comfortable life where everything is normal. And if I'm willing to discard those, I can have amazing amounts of adventure and an amazing impact on the world. And all I need to do is make sure I connect with as many other people that I can. And this is a relatively new insight to me, which is why I'm so glad to be able to do a workshop for a community like yours, where I'm like, this is where it's at. That's what needs to happen. The thing that we need to get back into life and society is community and connection.
Totally.
Well, it's all interrelated. All the work that we're doing here at Float House and with Vancouver Real and what you guys are doing with Wim Hof Method, it's all similar worlds, right?
Yes.
Now, if somebody is having like an off day and they're feeling a little funky, they're just down in the dumps, maybe it's been a couple of days, maybe it's been a couple of weeks, what would you prescribe to that person? What would be a good starting place to kind of get them out of that depressed mood into a more elevated and happy, better off mood?
I'm not sure if happy and better off is the first way to go. I would, so that's actually the third thing. So I started it with asking myself, who am I and what am I here to do, right? And I'm going to die. There's others out there like me. And that helps me to make it far bigger than myself, because my individual life is going to end. And in the meantime, I can have an impact. So for somebody like that, the first thing, the most powerful thing that you can do, apart from breathing practice and meditation and stuff, is to find something that is bigger than you. Because if you're suffering, so the realization that you're taking life very personally and you're taking your suffering very personally, a lot of times it has to do with not understanding that there's something bigger out there. So there's people have this bubble of individualism where they don't realize they're part of a larger thing that's going on. And isolation, so disconnection, I feel is the fundamental driver for suffering and for lack of happiness and health. And so it's lack of community and all of that.
Yeah, I'm wondering, in your opinion, like how much does the role of like social media play into that isolation? Like, we believe we're connected with all of our friends. We see them living these amazing lives on their social media, right? And then we look at our life and we're like, oh, we're not that happy. Things aren't happening for us the way that we see other people's lives living. Yeah. And we feel like we're in touch with people because we're liking and commenting on their posts. But I really do feel like it's that human to human interaction, which is like so critical. In fact, they say just by making eye contact, when a mother makes eye contact with the infant, it actually stimulates oxytocin, which is the love hormone.
My
right? So it's
drug.
like you start bonding with the infant that way. Same thing happens when you're talking with people in group settings or anything like that. You're making eye contact, you're making bonds, and that's probably such a huge aspect to being happy in general. Right?
Yes, absolutely. And also understanding that you are a fundamental part of it. And so I ask myself, who am I and what am I here to do? And I go like, I'm here to show the world who the fuck I am. And to understand that there is something bigger going on that you can contribute to and that you can help others. So I feel for a lot of people, devoting your life to something that is bigger than yourself can make it easier to keep yourself away from your personal hang-ups and your personal suffering. And then the understanding that there's others out there who understand your suffering and can help you. And once you're helped, you can start helping others. That's what it's about. Nobody is helped by people being miserable on their own on the couch and being depressed, right? So it's...
yeah, totally. I would honestly I completely agree with you. And I would say to people who are listening to this, if you're in the Vancouver area, come out to a meetup that we do with Vancouver Real sometimes. We have amazing teachers that come in, and they're always free. And it's just like a super uplifted, positive community. Yeah. Everyone there is of the same mindset, and they're all working on something within their lives, within themselves. And it's when you're around people like that, it becomes contagious. And you're just when you start seeing people setting examples for themselves in their lives, you'd be like, oh, I can be like that. I can be as good as that person or move in that direction or whatever. And I think just getting involved with a community of some type is a great one. And our community we're building in Vancouver Real is definitely a good one in my mind.
I agree. And one thing I wanted to chime in there too is when you asked the initial question, how do you get out of that funk? And then you were talking about patterns and stuff. And it's you got to disrupt that pattern.
Yes. Yeah.
So if you're in that funk, you got to somehow shake up the snow globe so that things are flying around a little bit. So you're not in that routine, that rut, and that wake up, do the same thing and still feel like shit and then go on. You got to snap it somehow. And then so what would you say would be one of... I don't know. There's so many ways to do it, but how would you, recommend someone could disrupt those shitty patterns?
I used to have a soft approach. I used to go think positive thoughts and go and find some help and make yourself comfortable. But I don't know what's exactly changed. But now I'm hold on, you're a human. This is pretty spectacular to be a human in the first place, right? And you have this cosmic millisecond in the grand scheme of things to be a human, and you have something to offer, right? And then actually I think Gary Vaynerchuk says this a lot, where he says nobody gives a shit. Nobody gives a shit whether you're suffering, whether you're on the couch. And you look at Tim Ferriss was suicidal at one point, right? Yeah. He could have killed himself. And people would have, nobody would have given a shit is too harsh of a statement because there's obviously
But how many lives has he impacted by his work?
That's the point, right? I could have stayed on the fucking couch, sitting there, being depressed, complaining about life, and complaining that I'm fat and that I'm miserable and thinking somebody needs to come and help me. And I didn't, right? And now I get to go out into the world and step up. And I wake up a lot of mornings in that funk where I go does it even make sense? And I feel so vulnerable and it's also scary. And then I go, nobody gives a shit, Kasper. You're going to die. Get up and contribute. Make this day worth something and go and help somebody, right? And now, 2 weeks ago, I gave a workshop out here in Vancouver. And yesterday, I got an email from somebody saying, hey, ever since your workshop, I've been doing the breath work. First time in my life, I stopped waking up with chronic pain. And I go, fuck yeah, that's what it's about, right?
Yeah.
I could have stayed at home because I'm fucking scared to go get on a plane to a country where I don't know anybody and do that. Or I could go out and connect and find people. So there's this group that I'm part of, a community. It's called Tribe Shift, where I met Candice, right? You're a community leader. And just a group of like-minded people looking for
Paul Hurley,
others.
shout out.
What?
Paul Hurley.
Paul Hurley, yeah, big shout out. Tony Floril, all my homies.
Oh yeah.
And these are people that are not so it's a Facebook group, but they're not constantly on Facebook talking to each other. They're making an effort to find each other. So Candy's got me over here. We taught the workshop. I was kind of scared and uncomfortable to go all over the world and teach and bring my family. I don't know what it's gonna I'm gonna bring, but I did it and it had an impact. And now I get this email from somebody saying, I don't have my chronic pain in the morning. And I go, yes. And this is not to brag about how much of an impact I'm having. This is a statement about human capacity, that everybody has something to give, and especially if you are, if you're a white man born in a Western wealthy country like me, there is a giant responsibility to step into your most optimal expression and to give that to the world. People are waiting. There's a world out there that needs to be saved.
Be the example, right? And, I've been really geeking out on this guy named Dr. Jordan Peterson lately. I'm not sure if you've heard of him, but it's pretty amazing stuff. And one thing he starts with is, if you want to start revamping your life, literally go home to your house and clean your room.
Oh, yeah.
Like, go and organize that one little piece of your life that you can control and get some control over that and make it the way you want to make it.
Yes.
And that is like a little empowerment step. And then he talks about how what that will actually do is start triggering the reward centers in our brain. So when we actually have small little obtainable goals and we're working towards those goals, we're going to hit those dopamine hits along the way, right? So you're going to come, and even when you're working towards hitting a goal, you're going to, like, that journey is like almost more happy and more exciting than when you hit your goal.
It is. Yeah,
like,
100% is.
So it's like you're getting those little dopamine hits every time you make a step towards hitting that goal. And that's literally one method people can pull themselves out of depression. It's not a guaranteed fix, but it's like, if you are in a funk, go home, take control of something within your life, and then start making small little goals every single day, work towards those goals. And eventually you're going to be like, wow, this feels really good to work towards something. And you can pull yourself out just by doing that. And then, to your point, elevating yourself, right? So it's like, now you've pulled yourself out of your funk. Now you're this shining example of what is possible. And it's like that, the old phrase, like, sometimes our greatest pain becomes our greatest gift to the world.
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? That's so applicable, right? You can, because you were at this low point, and then you pulled yourself up, and now you're out there teaching how you did it and affecting lives that way.
Absolutely. And I actually didn't know about Jordan Peterson until I got on the plane here and I had the Joe Rogan podcast with him. Yeah. And I was just like loudly applauding him on the plane.
Oh, it was ridiculous.
It's really powerful. And also, yes, I've been through a struggle, but like I said, I'm a white man born in a very rich Western country. I didn't have a tough life. But and so the good news is everybody struggles. But what you want is the freedom to choose your own struggle, to go, hey, I'm going to do this and I'm going to devote my life to it and I'm going to love it, because it's going to be a struggle either way. If you're looking for that zone, that place where everything is finally perfect, complete nirvana,
does not
utopia,
exist.
It's not going to happen, right? Yeah. And you're going to suffer either way. So you might as well take charge of what you're suffering from. Because now, I'm suffering from sleep deprivation and from jet lag and from anxiety about all this scary stuff. But I've chosen it, and I'm loving it. I love all the work, and I love doing 14-hour days, and I love being exhausted from it. And so what I'm trying to tell people a lot is to focus on your, I think Stephen Covey called it your circle of influence.
Yeah.
And so this is also why I don't have any goals anymore, because goal setting can very easily set yourself up to fail and to be very unhappy if you don't reach your goal, right? So I've stopped setting goals, but I have a very clear vision of what I want the world to look like. So in the macro view, in the grand scheme of things, I know what I want to build in the world. I want to build a sustainable world with happy and healthy people. And for me, the mantra has been, I want to contribute to building a world that I want my daughter to grow up in. That to me is such an inspiring thing, and that has made it bigger than me. So yes, you want to save the whales and get all of the plastic out of the ocean. Yes, you want to do that. But if you focus on that goal, you're just going to be like, where do we start?
It's so big, And one of the things I'll talk about you, in fact, when I was on London Real with Brian, I said the same thing. I'm like, when my daughter was growing up one day, I want to, and she looks at me and be like, what did you guys do with the planet when you were here? I want to have some real answers. And the number one conclusion I kept coming back to was the idea of taking care of my own shit. You know what I mean? Dealing with my own life, making my life as good as it can be in a sustainable way, elevating myself And like, again, that idea of like voting with your dollar is such a big one too.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
like,
Oh,
you know,
yes.
if you really want to see some change in the world, like look at the things you're purchasing and like buy more of the things that are in line with how you want to see things go. And that's one of the quickest ways you can do it, or probably most powerful, really.
Yeah.
You know?
And also, if you start to step into that expression, you're going to find alignment with other people, and it's all going to happen. And this is something that sounds, I don't go into making spiritual statements like that, but I've seen it. It's almost like there's a science. And also, like, you want to execute on the micro level as effectively as possible. And this is something that, yes, you want to have the macro view of I want to save the world and clean up all the nature reserves, but can you actually clean your room? Can you actually walk the street and pick up plastic from the street, right?
Yeah.
Can you actually execute on a micro level? Because everybody can dream about a utopia, but then what I dream about a utopia a lot. I dream about a world that is awesome and amazing, and then I let go of that dream, and in reality, I take the smallest possible actions to get there. And then every single day that I can look back and I go like, hey, all of my actions were aligned with that big goal, and I could just let it go and trust that if I keep executing within my circle of influence, then the big thing could happen. At least I'm contributing.
Yeah. And like I said, Mike touched on this actually earlier about like, you know, shaking up your snow globe, like disrupting your routine. You can do it through cold water. You can do it through breath work. You can do it by traveling. You can do it by so many different methods. But one method, like, you know, Mike and I are going to be delving back into is when we head down to Peru again. This will be my second retreat down there. Mike's fifth of, I don't know how many times you've been to Peru, right?
Yeah.
But it's like, have you ever dabbled in those kind of areas within the plant medicines or entheogens?
I'm about to.
Yeah.
Yeah, I used to have, I've been very strict not using any substance, well, except for caffeine, because I had the negative experience. And I love how Graham Hancock says it, where he says, like, I used to have an abusive relationship with this plant.
Yeah.
And that's how it was for me.
Yeah.
And now I'm starting to get back into a zone where I notice that I have a lot of fears, a lot of survival systems around that, because I used to have, well, I didn't have negative experiences at the time, but it was a very dark area in my life when I used to try everything and use everything in the wrong way. So in my perception, there are no bad substances. Like, the tool doesn't give a shit what you do. It's
your relationship
how you
to
use
it.
it, the relationship, the set and setting, as they say in the psychedelics world. And I feel personally that psychedelics are going to finally mature into the place where they're supposed to go in the next 5 to 10 years in the biohacking, self-improvement industry, health industry, where there's going to be a massive shift in the way that people use these things on a larger scale. And it's going to wreak havoc on some of the pharmaceutical parts of the world. And
well, it's happening already, right?
Yes, exactly.
With the research that MAPS is doing. I mean, now with the MDMA studies, they're having really great success by curing PTSD and depression with MDMA-assisted psychotherapy.
Yes.
So it's like in conjunction with therapy, not just going out to a rave and doing MDMA. Probably not going to do that much for you, but like when you do it the right way with a therapeutic context, or if you're like using these entheogens or plant medicines in like a ceremonial setting. Like Mike can definitely speak more about this than I can, but I've had my own experiences with it. But it's like these things that like are currently, you know, banned, but you know they're doing the research now. They're going to find out that these things are going to be extremely beneficial for mental health and safe for most people. Not everybody should be doing them. There's some people that will react badly, but for the majority of the population, it's actually quite safe. That's the other thing too.
Yeah. And what I find interesting, what I love about the whole discussion about psychedelics is that everybody who knows about it is very nuanced. All these people that are like Terrence and Dennis McKenna, they're all very nuanced about safety and about stuff like that. Even though if you look at their research, like take any antidepressant that's out on the market, right?
Yeah.
A doctor says, here, take it, it's safe. Also kind of read this piece of paper, and the piece of paper has like tens dozens.
It's like homicidal rages, suicidal rages.
Exactly.
Like, wow, this is what I'm taking.
It's safe. It's been tested. Just kind of read this, and if you ever feel like you're in a homicidal rage,
just let us know.
Call the doctor, right? And then you have this whole field of psychedelics, most of which you couldn't even. It wouldn't be worthwhile
you can't
printing
get
out the
addicted to
whole.
them, really. Like you can't.
Yeah.
They're not addictive, and you wouldn't want to be addicted to these things. Like you know, it's a 1 or 2 time a year thing, maybe.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But you're going to get huge benefits out of it.
And also, I'm not saying this because I'm on a mission to promote psychedelics. I'm on a mission to. I feel that common sense and scientific literacy and nuance are lacking.
Yes,
people, they want to go for
time.
extremes. They want to go say, fuck the pharmaceuticals and everything is about psychedelics, or it's only meditation and only breath work. But what about...
Yeah.
This whole bunch of tools that we can use to expand our awareness of who we are as humans, to influence our health and our happiness and the way we can influence our life. And what if we would all look for the best way to utilize those to align our lives in a way that everybody's actually helped with, right? So nobody is helped by people suffering and out in the street. And I have another thing that I keep in mind, another little mantra. I can't think of the song or the singer it's from, but it says, if one of us is chained, none of us are free. Yeah. This is about slavery, obviously, but it touches me in a way. Like yesterday, I was talking to this guy. He was out in the street with his cup right in front of the supermarket, and I didn't have any change. I gave him a piece of chocolate and just had a short conversation with him. So here's a guy, really nice, smart, charming, has had mental illness since he was a kid, and he has not been able to utilize the help that was given to him, and he's on the street, right? And he's sitting right below this fucking skyscraper, and as long as that's also my idea about wealth. I don't care about individual wealth, and I think about, if one of us is chained, none of us are free. And so everybody has the responsibility to start working with these modalities and to be able to contribute. And to me, that is the goal, to find a mode of expression where if you step into it, you can actually start to take care of people.
Yeah.
And I think that psychedelics could be a catalyst for that, because everybody who comes out of a properly designed psychedelic experience understands that they're part of a larger whole and they want to contribute. And I love that.
So frequently. And I like what you said about I think you're taking like a data-driven approach to risk, essentially. Because that's one thing that people blow way out of proportion. Like they, especially like the outstanding one for sure is terrorism or threats of terrorism. Like the likelihood that someone's of course it's going to happen and will continue to happen, but the likelihood of anyone actually getting caught in one, like your personal likelihood, is statistically so low, it's ridiculous. Like I posted this thing on the Vancouver Real Facebook page.
I just saw it when I was sharing
and it's basically saying like heart disease and then cancer are like the one and two killers of people on the planet.
And then respiratory problems.
For sure. So it's like, but yet how much money is being thrown towards the military to go fight these terrorists, which, if you want to really save some lives, throw that money into healthcare. Yeah. Like seriously, right?
Exactly. But it's kind of ridiculous. And if you look at at that little infographic and you think about how many of those big problems are actually caused by habit, by behavior, by daily behavior, right? Lifestyle.
Yeah.
A lot, and they say cancer as a whole, but if you look at a lot of them, we know that they're lifestyle related. And heart disease, we know that a lot of this is lifestyle related. I meet so many people with circulation problems that are still very young. And the great thing about the Wim Hof, the ice bath work from the Wim Hof method is that it points out circulatory problems pretty soon, and it actually allows you to work with it. And this is something that I find so interesting. For example, when they talk about fear of terrorism, and I ask them, how afraid are you of shark attacks, right? And they go like, well, not at all.
Yeah.
But then, statistics are also like a mindfuck, because obviously you have a 0.0001 chance of being bitten by a shark. But obviously, if you do get into the water with sharks, you have a 100% increase, from 0 to 0.0001 is a 100% increase, right? So this statistics and the way information is displayed to us is always within somebody else's mind frame, within somebody else's mission. There's always so data is always displayed to us in a way where it is meant to make us feel or think in a certain way. And if you understand that you're being influenced for somebody else's benefit, that's what gives the freedom. And that's why I think scientific literacy is so important. And to make micro changes is so important. Because exactly what you said, if you can vote with your money. So I've stopped buying anything that I don't agree with. And
that's tricky too, because like when you start going down that rabbit's hole, like you really got to do your homework, because you have no idea where these companies are manufacturing their clothes or where they're sourcing their products, and how are they treating the people where they source their products from, and what are the ethical and environmental practices put in place in that. Like it's a crazy rabbit's hole, but I mean, I mean, really though, if you instead of going out and protesting on the street, which is probably not going to accomplish anything, like go and like do some research and be like, oh well, I'm supporting X company that is doing this amount of harm in the world. Well, I'm not going to support them anymore. I'm not going to buy that product, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And if I were, let's say, people who are protesting against evil corporations, for example, if I was an evil corporation, I would love it that all those people are protesting instead of actually using their wit and their ability and their capacity to actually do something about it, right?
Totally.
So, like I stopped buying clothing altogether, and actually I've had a few offerings for sponsored deals by companies, and they would go like, hey, we want to send you like a package with all our clothing, and like you can kind of communicate it online, and they go, and so we want to give you free stuff. They come, and then I go, so how do you produce your clothing, and where is it made, and how are these factories? And then they go like, well, we haven't, we're starting to look into that. And I go, oh, sorry, I'm not going to promote your thing.
Yeah.
Right. And then and this is what I love about it. As I started communicating more about it, there's this new brand called the Cosm that have they actually come from a bigger clothing corporation, and they make clothing that I completely agree with, right? And so through
your homework and research.
Yes, homework and research, but also telling the story. And that's something that social media does give us.
Yes.
So one of the downside is that, so you have this, and Stephen Covey describes, you have the circle of engagement or involvement, so things that involve you or that you are a part of.
Like within your realm of influence.
Yeah, and then you have a circle of influence.
Yes.
And in your circle of influence is very small, but what social media does is it tells us everything that's going wrong in the world, and what general media does. So suddenly now you are involved with everything in the world, which relatively makes your circle of influence tiny. So people, they become lethargic, and they feel like they can't do anything because they know too much about what's going wrong in the world, and then they don't see how big their influence could be.
Yeah.
So, and then there's a few guys who just make a clothing brand, and they're basically saving lives by, making beautiful clothing, making people happy with the clothing, and turning a profit, and everybody wins. And we now live in a world where you can actually do that. Right?
Yeah.
So you can go out there and live your dream and help others and create personal wealth and personal freedom. It's possible.
Yeah.
Right? And now and I feel that as soon as somebody finds that mode for themselves, that, well, we gain the responsibility to give that back to others, to help others.
Yeah, totally. Well, you're definitely out there in the world, and you seem like you're one of those guys out there that are just kind of pulling people out of the matrix a little bit. That's like seems to be your role at the moment. You're going and doing these workshops everywhere and teaching people about their own, how to take control of their lives. One thing I've been really kind of playing with the idea of is like just the idea of self mastery, like really just like taking control of my own life as much as possible, and really working on elevating myself and not worrying about too much other stuff right now. Just like, let's get my shit completely in order first before I worry about everything else,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Like the whole clean your room,
first.
The clean your room premise,
Yeah.
Like don't go messing with the economy 18-year-old, you mess with that at your detriment.
And I love, this is something that was so, well, I hated it at the time, but I was like 18 or 19, and I was like, everything sucks, and told my mom, you know what, I want to do what you did. I want to go to Africa and help. And she was like, okay, so what can you actually do there? And I was like, what? No, I'm going to help like you guys. She said, yeah, well, I was a nurse. I saved lives on a daily basis. What are you going to do? What do you have to give? And I was like, shit, Mom.
Thanks for bursting my bubble, Mom.
Say, man? Yeah. And so she was like, well, I've been there, and I've seen people who come there and they think they're helping, and they drink the water and they eat the food, and they don't really have impact. So make sure you're very good at something, right?
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people who go like, yeah, well, I'm not making an impact, and I go, well, is there actually a skill that you have? And a lot of people, they focus on finding their passion and working on their mission, and then they forget that the tool that you have to do that is a skill, to be good at something. And if there's anything you're going to master, make sure you start with yourself, exactly like you said.
Yeah.
Clean up your room. Be nice to your neighbors, right?
Yeah.
Pick up trash from the street, and do your best.
Start there.
You do, yeah.
Just in Canada alone. Just like we have I mean, it's still one of the most affluent, well-off countries in the world for sure. But I mean, in our own backyard, we have like, First Nation reserves that have like, third world conditions. You know what I mean? Like this terrible water supply, like very poor education, like very high addiction rates. I mean, why are you flying off to some like foreign country to build houses in like, South America when you have like a reserve in your own backyard that could use all that help and more to get through that stuff?
And it's also about ownership, understanding that you're a part of it, right? And I was walking down the street and I saw, and I don't want to bash Canada. I love Canada a lot, but then there was this thing that said celebrating 150th university. So Canada is now 150 years old.
Yeah.
And I go, yay, Canada. But what happened before that? Because that's only 3 generations ago, which means that like our grandfathers and great-grandfathers, or yours, well, they're also mine because there were a lot of Dutchies involved. They came here, and what was going on before that?
Well, right? It was the colonization process,
exactly.
which is still in place right now. Actually, the whole colonization movement, and it's like, you wonder why such a high proportion of like the First Nations people have addiction problems, right? They've suffered extreme pain like just a few generations ago.
Yeah.
When your grandparents or your parents are being put through the Canadian residential school system and, just getting beaten because you speak a word that's not English, that's going to be some pretty hard trauma. And then, of course, they turn to drugs, alcohol, and then it's a family thing. It goes on. The pain's passed generationally. And then it just keeps going, right? But it's like, so I'm saying, like, we have an amazing country. We have amazing resources and so much we can do here. But it's like let's clean up our backyard before we go worry about anybody else.
It's kind of like applying those clean the room principles to the whole nation. It's like let's acknowledge what this nation was built on as it stands now, and how can we start to take responsibility for that.
Yeah,
and those are big questions that a lot of people
it's
don't seem to care about too much.
I feel like it's a lot sexier to be like, yeah, I'm supporting, whatever organization in third world, but it's like, it's not nearly as glamorous to be like, I'm going to go and, work on this reserve out in the middle of nowhere.
And that's the thing. I mean, you can look at all these issues, whether it's environmental issues and getting more towards sustainable energy and sustainable food and like actually, permaculture styles, and then social relations. They're all just gigantic opportunities, and they're real opportunities. Like those are the ones that are in your country, in your city, in your backyard, that are just sitting there waiting for you.
Yeah, and I'm always like get excited about it. I find something, because if everybody on the planet would help one other person, then everybody's helped. So that's what I'm trying to look at, like the micro scale of that, right? And you can all. There's people wanting to solve the whole immigration crisis, but there's a good chance that somebody who lives like 3 doors down from you is an immigrant, and it might have been 15 years ago. How about you have a conversation and try to understand what this person has gone through in their life, and then ask yourself if there's any way you can contribute to the whole thing. So I feel like, and I've seen this a lot in my work, which is the most inspiring thing, because what I started to focus on is how can I be the best teacher, right? So I found teaching for me to be the most profound way to express myself that is of service to others. So how can I become a master of that? And that's what I've been focusing on. And as soon as I got out of my hole, I was able to contribute and help people. And now I see people who are, they're in a depth of their life, and I give them this tool, for example, the Wim Hof method, which is one of the fastest, most powerful tools that I've seen. They go and practice for a few months, and they get out of it, and then they get in touch with me. Or some people read my book, and they go, hey, you know what, I don't have my concentration problem anymore. I can go to work. And I go, yes, that's the impact. And then all of them, every single one of those testimonials that I've got from people go, and I was able to help this person. And I was finally able to go to this country and contribute to helping people there. So I have seen that as soon as people take care of themselves and they find a mode for their own life, then they start to help. So it's your responsibility to take care of yourself first.
Totally. I just want to switch gears a little bit and just maybe ask you, like, what are some resources you can throw out there to people that, are looking to make a change in their life? Like, what kind of books have influenced you? Maybe different podcasts, resources that you're currently using in your life that you might find that people might find useful.
I'm very much into Stoic literature, which is apparently on the rise. Which is
Stoic literature.
Stoic literature.
Yeah.
Like, Tim Ferriss has been all over it. I love The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck is one of the latest books that I've been reading.
Yeah.
Very good. And The Obstacle is the Way, Ego is the Enemy. It's all about this is all about focusing on what you can influence, which is, I love it.
Nice.
And I really love these Yuval Noah Harari, if I'm saying it correctly, Homo Deus and Sapiens. These are
I listened to him on Sam Harris's podcast a little while ago. Really good. He's an interesting guy. He goes at one point. I think he did a year-long Vipassana, and then but I think he routinely goes, and I think Sam Harris did that as well, but. He routinely goes every single year and does a Vipassana, a month-long Vipassana, which is like, that's pretty dedicated to do that every single year. Damn. And maybe even longer. I want to say he goes for like 90 days at a time because he's like a professor, right? So he has the summers off or whatever, and he just goes and does
If I end up that smart, I might be willing to do it.
Yeah.
Well, for me, resources, I love the fact that there's so much valuable audio out there. Because I need to move in order to learn. And I love just, doing yard work, cleaning up my house, and having like at 3 speed audiobooks loaded into my brain and podcasts. And I try to utilize that as much as possible and to have, I have periods where I'm just always listening to something.
What are your top podcasts?
Tim Ferriss Show.
Yeah.
That's standard. Tim Ferriss Show. I've recently been listening to a lot of Joe Rogan.
Yeah. Yeah, he's always got good gems that come on that show.
And like, for example, I love how, for example, Seth Godin comes across on audio. And he has this very, very nice way of speaking and soft tone and everything. So every now and then I find somebody that I'm really interested in, and then I just look for any podcast that I can find that has the person on it. And
nice.
And some of these psychonauts like Dennis McKenna and Graham Hancock, I've been delving into that a lot, and I feel that I just want to get as many sources as I can. So I love audible.com, the Amazon audiobook platform. My book is on there too, by the way, which was even a bigger win for me than getting in print, because print didn't mean that much to me, but audio is like, yes, I finally have the audiobook.
Cool. Yeah.
And so those are some amazing things. There's a wealth of online courses that are amazing. The Wim Hof Method one is one of the most powerful things I've seen in terms of bang for buck. You can just get like $200, you get this 10-week program, and people have their lives changed forever. I think that's pretty spectacular. And what I'm trying to do is to engage with relatively small communities where there's not necessarily a thought leader in charge, right? Instead of following a person, or which is what I love. I love like following people like Seth Godin or whatever, all these names that I've mentioned. And then kind of finding the embodiment of that person and learning through it. But and then next to that, I love small communities like your Vancouver Real community, like Tribe Shift that I've talked about. I have a community in the Netherlands for MindLift where people connect. That's where I really look for integration. So I read from the greats and I listen to the greats, and then I go, so where can I find actual people that are integrating that into their lives, that are embodiments of that? Where can I see examples and then connect with them? So I could definitely encourage anybody to find a community of like-minded people.
Yeah, totally. That's a huge one. So where do you see yourself in 5 years' time?
That's a difficult question.
Yeah, that's a very difficult question.
If you're going with the flow, it's really hard to know.
I'll see myself back here telling about all my amazing adventures.
Okay, yeah, we'll definitely do that.
So one thing that I do have in mind in terms of getting my stuff together is I want to be entirely self-sustainable in when I'm 35. So, and I say I want to be able to retire at 35, and that doesn't mean I have the yacht and the big fat mansion. That means that that the level of control over my own life has grown to a point where I don't deplete any resources. So I want to have a sustainable home. It's very important to me, where that is actually energy positive, where I can live in a small community with like-minded people and have that place to raise my family. And that I feel like I am really taking charge of all of these areas of my life. I don't create any waste. I don't, waste any energy or resources or whatever. So that's one very important thing for me. And that is also, so one of the things I want to start getting into more now that I've got my own shit more together is to get back on my environmental work, which was the reason I started working on myself in the first place. Sustainability. And what I'm doing right now is I'm building multiple new businesses. I started MindLift as an experiment. I had no idea what was going to happen. Then it took off and everything went well, especially together with the Wim Hof method was like kind of like a catalyst, because now I'm like the head instructor for the academy. I reach a lot of people through there. There's a lot of people who love the combination of my book and the Wim Hof method and the work that I do. So I kind of, in the beginning, I was like, oh, it's happening. It might be temporary. I might lose it all in a year, and let's enjoy the ride and do whatever I can. And now I've noticed that, oh, actually, I'm just getting started. So I've started a few new businesses, and in the next 4 or 5 years, I want to expand my reach, create scalability where I can be of service at a larger scale. And I don't know exactly what that looks like.
Yeah.
Because I have the bigger scheme of things in mind, and I just go, okay, execute. And I'm creating a lot of openness because there's a lot of opportunity coming my way, and I don't want to bite myself into one thing and then miss some amazing connection or opportunity. Because if I would have done that, I wouldn't have been here.
Totally.
Yeah.
What would you say your biggest failure is in life?
I'm one of those obnoxious people that say you learn from all your failures, and that's amazing. So that's not going to be a very satisfactory answer. Wow, that is a good question.
Okay, we can come back to that one.
Yeah, I'll
come back to that
I'll
one.
think
That's
about
a
it.
tricky one.
But it is, I mean, that's an interesting question, because it is like, probably with your outlook, you could look back on any major, say ethical or moral thing that you know is wrong and be like, okay, well, I mean, I did that at the time, and ultimately the series of events afterwards and onwards to this moment now in time has put me where I am now. And like, unless you are regretting who you are in this moment right now, or resentful or whatever, then it's kind of a tricky.
Yeah, that's why
question.
I said like, but let's if we rephrase the question, when was the time you felt like a failure the most? Then I can find plenty.
Okay, gotcha.
Just really,
yeah.
And also like I've been what I found is that the more human vulnerability I show in my work, the more people I can actually reach. So the last time I felt like a giant failure was actually after I got MindLift out and it took off and it went well and it started selling and everything, and then. The joke about the breathwork teacher who can't get a breather, right? And I was teaching meditation and breathwork and stress management and all this stuff at so many levels in so many different places, traveling, having the book that I almost burned out. I was at a point where I was like back and feeling at my lowest, and I was like, shit, I'm such an imposter.
Right.
Yeah.
I write about this stuff, I teach about this stuff, and now I find myself back in this place, and it felt like such a failure, because I was like, and this is something that all authors have. They have a fear, what we call the imposter syndrome, that at a certain point I don't know who they are, but they're gonna find out that you're really not as good as you portray yourself to be, and it was all a sham, right? And this is actually, I've started talking about this imposter syndrome, and every time I do, I have a lot of men especially who come to me afterwards and they go like, oh my God, thank you for saying that out loud, because that's exactly how I feel, but I feel too vulnerable talking about it. So that was definitely, it was about a year ago, where I was like, am I burning out? Well, teaching people not to burn out. And that felt like, okay, I definitely need to change the gears a little bit in a way where I keep taking care of myself first.
Yeah,
Totally.
That's that delicate balance of like, being able to capitalize on the momentum that you have and optimize that and keep going, but then also, you were trying to do as much as you could.
Yeah.
But at the finite nature of our bodies in some degree and our minds and everything, it has to come back to, okay, I need to nourish this, like if I'm going to be at that. So it's, it happens to everybody. And that's why like having, rhythms and cycles in life, I think are really important, because you can't redline it forever, nor I think is that it's not sustainable in talking about sustainability. And also it prevents creativity and being able to explore and I think it starts to constrain that openness that we kind of value so much in exploration.
And what I found interesting is that I feel openness in storytelling I think everybody has to craft their skill of storytelling and use it, because just like with the imposter syndrome, when I started talking about being a meditation, breathwork, personal improvement teacher and finding, basically ramming into a wall, I was like, let's just tell the story. I'm not going to hide this. Let's just tell the story. And then I actually had a bunch of yoga teachers and meditation teachers and people like that coming and saying like, oh, I'm so glad you kind of popped the bubble on that, because that's exactly how I felt. And I felt like such an imposter, and it turns out to be a very common thing about people who talk about the exact topics I'm talking about, that they at a certain point, they have a hard time doing it in their own lives.
Yeah. Awesome. Okay. Yeah. Last question. Okay. If you could make a phone call to your 20-year-old self, what would you tell that person?
That's a really good question. I want to say be patient and don't take yourself too seriously. I think that would have been the most helpful. Patience is very difficult for me.
Yeah. Awesome.
Says the guy that listens to audiobooks at 3 times the speed.
Exactly.
Yeah. But
want to get it all in.
Very cool. Okay, well, probably wrap it up. But Kasper, really pleasure to meet you. Thank you so much for working with our community, both the intensive and then the free workshop you gave, coming on the podcast, and just being who you are. Like, it's hilarious that you had written on your vision board like you're going to die, because you know who else did that? This guy right here, Andy. That's the same thing he had on his door.
As I walk out my apartment every day, I had the "You're going to die" right there in my face. And I took it down after a while because I didn't want to become like a self-fulfilling prophecy or something like that, which is going to happen. But it's like,
But yeah, so it's cool. I feel like we definitely have met an other, if you will, and
for sure,
really cool. And we'll definitely have to keep in touch. And whenever you're back in town, we'll
do it again.
What we can
get
do,
you back on.
Options.
Love to.
Yeah, keep it going. So thank you so much.
Yes, thank you guys. And for anybody listening, if there's anything I said that you connected on or feel inspired by, I love doing podcasts. The only downside is that it's a one-way traffic. So if there's anything that I said that you connected to, find me online. If you have a question, just send it to me. I love hearing back. And every time I say this, I'm like, am I giving myself a massive workload and answering messages? But
maybe
that's what you want.
Or if you have a question,
it's the connection.
If you have a question that you heard anything on today, you can just ask it in the comment box on this Facebook Live, and then you can go back and comment on it right now if you want to.
Yeah,
or whatever you want. So if you have a question, just go ahead and ask it on the in the comment box right now.
Yeah. Awesome. So mindlift.com is your website.
Yes.
You have a MindLift page, I assume, for Facebook. And And what's your Instagram?
Instagram is at Kasper's Focus. KASPERS FOCUS.
Kasper's Focus.
Yeah, I'm most active on Instagram and Facebook.
Beautiful.
Awesome. Yeah, awesome. So that's it. Again, Vancouver Real Community Meetups. We have Slava Golubov coming up in July, which will be really awesome. Of course,
he's going to be a big one.
He always fills up really quick when we have Slava as a guest. And we also have on June 20th the Mindful Mass meditation. So definitely come out to that. You can go to the Mindful Mass group page or look at Mindful Mass Facebook page, and you can find the event through there. We should probably have a good 120, 150 people out to that one again. So come meditate in a group. If you haven't done that before, that's an interesting experience to harness all those minds together in one place, just becoming really present.
Well, and in a public setting. I love the whole concept of having this group of people come together, meet, sit down, go and have their meditation session, and then just boom, disperse. It's just like dropping consciousness bombs on the universe.
Totally.
So cool.
C-bombs.
Yeah. And of course, if you like what you heard today, we always really appreciate it if you can give us a review and rating on iTunes. That's always helpful. And share the episode and tag your friends and all that good stuff. So
awesome.
And we really appreciate all the support that we get, because we get a lot of amazing people coming out to the events and just engaging with us online. And honestly, it wouldn't be here without you guys. So thank you.
Cool. Until next time.
To whatever is.
To whatever is.